again, and welcome to the Author Roundup. This special segment of the Book Connection Show showcases emerging indie authors who join us for a discussion of their newly published books. Join us for a conversation with our next guest author. Welcome to Author Roundup. My name is Emma, and I will be your host for today's episode. And with me today, I have not only one author, but I have two authors. They are a dynamic mother-daughter duo, crafting enchanting tales that ignite young minds and fostering passion for readers. With Hope's background in elementary education and Lori's expertise as an educational leader, their stories are not only captivating, but also educational. Hi guys, how are you today?
Great, thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course. I'm so happy for you both to be here. So you wrote a book last year called Ezra's Day Off, and it is a children's book, which is so exciting. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure, Ezra is an earthworm, and
Okay.
he finds his work underground dull and boring and wonders if it's significant. So he decides to take a day off and explore the garden.
Nice. And is this your first book together, written
Yes.
together? Have either of you written a book before or had any experience writing? I know you guys are both in the educational world, but as far as writing goes.
Yeah, in my undergraduate at Stetson University, I had a senior research paper that I did, and it was all about the wonders of using garden-based learning in the elementary classroom. So I did two papers then, and my mom has written a book before. I think it came out like 10 years ago, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
but it was not a children's book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What Hope did not tell you is that her papers were published in academic journals, educational journals, and I've just always had an interest in writing as well. So this has been a lifelong dream for me actually to write a children's book, and it's been great to do it with my daughter.
Yeah, that's so exciting. So what inspired you to create this character and to eventually publish and write this book?
Yeah, I can touch on that a little bit. The whole idea kind of came to fruition because I recently, graduated. I moved out of the house, and so I was thinking about different things that I want to accomplish and what I want my life to look like in the next 5 years. So put my pen to paper, and the first thing I wrote on there was to write and publish a children's book with my mom
Oh
because
my,
she had always mentioned that she wanted to write a children's book, and I was like, I want to write a children's book. And since I have my teaching certificate and I have my background in elementary education, I still wanted to contribute to that field and have a body of work applicable for all people. And currently in the state of education, especially in the elementary field, sometimes subjects like science, social studies, writing, even are put on the back burner to make more focus for reading and math.
mm,
So I wanted to have a fun literary tool that teachers could use that also teaches their students about science, and something as fun as gardens
mhm.
is something that's on the rise for many different schools like across the nation. So
Yeah.
garden-based learning is on the up and up, which is really exciting. And hopefully this book can inspire some very interactive and engaging lessons.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. And so, because of your expertise on the benefits of gardening for students, how did you incorporate that knowledge, I guess, specifically into the story to highlight themes that you have in your guys' book, which is like teamwork, friendship, self-discovery, and the role of insects, right, that play in the garden?
Yeah. Uh, that's a great question. Based on what I know with garden-based learning, um, and different classes that I've taken at Stetson, is that everything starts with the soil.
Mhm.
There's like a book or a documentary called Kiss the Dirt, and it talks all about the importance of healthy soil and If we didn't have that, life would not sustain. And I think that's why we chose to specifically get our hands dirty with this children's book, specifically being in a garden and looking at Ezra, who lives underground, who lives in the soil and contributes to making everyone's life much better. But since he's so minuscule, like in the grand scheme of things, like he's a small being, it's easy to overlook his importance. And he himself had that same experience until he met other people that assured him otherwise.
Yeah. And real quickly, I just want to touch on, so I have a 2.5-year-old, and something that we really try to make her aware of is that insects are, still animals, and
Mhm.
like worms, they're like beautiful in their own sense. So I think this is great having a book like this as far as talking and incorporating like worms and insects into a book to make it like more fun, and like spiders and things like that. So I think alone, like that's like a really good topic in a sense for young kids. So how did you guys stumble upon the name Ezra? Does it have a significance?
Yeah.
We were, do you want to take that one?
I do want to take that one. Something that I was very, very passionate about throughout this process was the names that we chose for the characters. I've taken different classes where we talked about the importance of diverse literature, especially in like the elementary stage. So introducing new concepts, new cultures, and different names. I wanted it to be different than some books that I might have grown up with. And so when we were making this book, I compiled a list of, I think, like 20 different names, and Ezra was at the top of the list because I think it sounds like a really confident name. It's a good name. It's one that people may have heard before, but it's not too common. And the actual meaning of Ezra is strength. And then with the other characters, the same thing. But one in particular, the ant, Mateen, that's named after a good friend of mine. And I thought it was a cool way to honor him and having a name that I've never met anyone else named Mateen before.
Mm-hmm.
And the last character I'll touch on just very briefly is Abeja. That's the bee. She's one of the main characters. And I love the Spanish culture, and I really wanted to do something that highlights its importance. Since it's one of the most commonly spoken languages, especially here in Florida, it's so commonly spoken. And the meaning of abeja in Spanish is bee. So it's just something nice and
Oh
simple.
my gosh.
And I think it's a pretty like easy word for most people to pronounce too.
Yeah.
So it's just a fun way to interweave, to wove together different cultures at a very, very small scale.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just add to that, Ezra? So we did look at the list of names that Hope came up with, and we both do like alliteration. So Ezra, earthworm just
Yeah,
seemed to
that's
to flow
perfect.
together, and so that's the reason he got the lead in the story, more than anything, and how we came up with the title.
Wow. Yeah, I love how meticulous you were about like the names and the meanings of the names and creating more like authentic and unique names, and because there's so many different names in children's books, so it's nice to have something more unique like that. And Ezra is, yeah, a great name. You touched on the characters a little bit, and the other main characters and their names. How was it for you guys developing these characters and creating them? What was the character development process like for writing a book?
Can I jump in on that one? About 20 years ago, there was a book that came out called The Art of Writing. And it's a way of just really mapping stories. And so we sat down at the very beginning and did that. And we
Oh,
knew we wanted Ezra to be the center focus, and then we came out with names and what their roles would be. But I have to tell you, one of the neatest things is that Hope is in Sanford, I'm in Jacksonville, so we were not in the same place writing. So as those characters developed, it was a lot of emails back and forth
mhm,
where I would write some, send it to her, she might make revisions, vice versa. And that was really how it developed. So we had mapped the story out, but then that back and forth and real development just came from emails back and forth over the course of maybe about 6 months or so. I think it took us to hammer it all out.
Oh, okay, 6 months to complete the book.
Yes, and then the best thing we did was get an editor who told us we needed to cut it in half. And
Oh,
so we had a bit
wow.
longer. But the other thing too, as Hope mentioned, I just would like to add is that within the story there are fun facts almost on every page, highlighting how fast a bee's wings flaps, and just different facts about each insect. And that was really fun to research and to add into the story. But a good editor is something that I strongly recommend. And she was the one who said, look, you've got to say a lot with a few words. And that's what even made the process a little bit longer.
Yeah, and maybe a little challenging. Yeah. So you did mention I did have a question about educational content, and you mentioned that you have like fun facts, which is like so important, I feel like, and adds to another element of storytelling for young kids. How is that to balance the storytelling and educational content? And whose idea was it to put the little like fun fact pop-ups on your pages?
That was me for the fun facts.
Nice.
So that was another way that I wanted to tie together the actual realism of education
Mhm.
and make this a fun, engaging book for kids. So while it is an entertaining story, it's a great story about friendship, cooperation, and finding your role and purpose. It's also a great resource for teachers to be able to use this in their classrooms.
Mhm. And so, Hope, did you grow up gardening with your mom?
I wouldn't say too much, but we did
No.
grow like different things a little bit. Like we had peppers. I
Mhm.
remember we grew this really, really nice pepper, and it lasted for maybe a day because a very hungry caterpillar actually came through and ate the whole pepper.
That's hilarious. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So how do you hope that this inspires children to connect with nature more and have a development love for gardening?
Amazing, amazing question. Hopefully the bright, vibrant colors invites them to step outside and see those things right before them. I think our illustrator did a fantastic job painting and putting together all of the flowers and then the vegetables. And hopefully they look scrumptious enough to where you're like, oh my gosh, that watermelon looks amazing. Like I need to have one in my backyard right now. And hopefully the parent themselves have an affinity for nature or for gardening.
Mhm.
And if not, hopefully they realize that this is an activity that they can do with their child. And this is something that will really just help the longevity of their relationship, I think. Because whenever
Mhm.
you are in nature and are able to get your hands dirty, I do think it does some like healing for the soul.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like in today's world with like screen time and TV and things like that, like being outside and gardening and playing with dirt is such like a great skill for kids and young kids, and also like it's a memory, like it's a memory that you can have with your kids, grandparents or parents. So that in a sense, hopefully that ignites something in parents to do that with their kids, because it's so important to get outside and do things like that. You mentioned the illustrations and the illustrator that worked on your book. How is that part of self-publishing, the illustrations and the design, the cover? What was that like for you guys?
So that's really kind of a neat story. So the illustrator is really important. And there are many venues that you can pursue. I mean, there's some online places like Fiverr and everything else, but we wanted our illustrations to be just such an important part of the story. And we wanted somebody who was an artist.
Mhm.
And so we sought out a few people. And in fact, the first person we asked to do it was Enable and referred us to the illustrator that we got. Jeremy Webker, who is an artist in Orlando. And so he
Oh,
too is in
wow.
Florida, and he is an artist out of Orlando. And the work that he did was just spectacular. We had some conversations, and he sent us some samples of kind of what we had in mind, and then we just let him run with it. But if you really look at those pictures, I mean, if you ever looked at a magazine that has the hidden pictures in it, if you really take time to look at the pictures on each page, you will see little details. I mean, you can look at the big picture, but if you take the time to really dig, it's kind of like the book Goodnight Moon, where there was a little mouse, you had to be looking for. He put some of that in there, so it makes the pages really engaging and important. And we recognize the fact that you can have a story for children, but it's the artwork that makes such a big difference, and the illustrations that make the story come to life.
Yeah, that's so true about little like nuggets in books. Just like when you're going back and reading it again to your child and you like notice some things. It reminds me of that story. I don't know, Hope, if your mom read this to you, like it was Little Critters or something. Do you remember that story? Where
I
there was like
don't.
a mouse and a spider like on every page. So that's what it
We did
reminded me
not read
of.
that, but we read a lot of Goodnight Moon,
Yeah, one.
which I read multiple times until our oldest son, he pointed out to me, I didn't even see the mouse on the page because I was so focused on the words. So,
Yeah,
but we did not read that book. We read a lot of books at our
yeah,
house, and
yeah.
the pictures were very, very important in the
Very
children's
important.
books that we read.
Yeah, so that's really fun that you guys made sure that was an important component that was made into your book. So how long did it take for the illustration part of publishing? Do you guys remember like how long it took back and forth to get like a finalized product of the pages and the cover?
I think the easiest thing for us to do was to write, right? And then we had to revise with the editor. And
Mm,
that took about 6 months. And then we had to have the story completed and
mhm,
finished before we submitted it to the illustrators. So I would say the illustrations took a good 3 to 6 months to get done because again, he is an artist in Orlando and this was a side project for him.
okay, gotcha. And so what else do you think illustrations play enhancing the storytelling experience for children?
I think with this story in particular and the wonderful job that Jeremy did is the facial expressions. So even if you can't read the story yourself, if you're too young, you can still gather what's happening based on the illustrations. Like one of my favorite illustrations in the whole book is when Ezra is talking to Naya and she's talking about little plant pests called aphids. And he's like, well, where do they go? Why are you so interested in them? And she's like, well, I eat them. And then Ezra, he like covers his mouth with his arm and he
Mhm,
looks like he's about to throw up. And he's like imagining Naya eating the aphids, and I think that presents comedy. It presents what's happening currently in the book, and also ignites imagination in that same moment.
mhm. Yeah, that's cool. And so this book in particular is good for ages 4 to 8, correct? Am I correct on that? Yeah. And so how did you guys tailor your book for this age group, like the language and the tone and the things in your story for this age group?
I would credit the editor with a lot of that. A
Oh,
lot
okay.
of, when our first draft was 3,000 words, and she said this needs to be 1,000 words.
Oh my.
So, and she was really good. And we had actually incorporated those fun facts that are in the book as part of the story, which made the story longer. And she was the one who said, look, these are important, but it adds too many words. So why don't you pull it out as the fun facts? And so I would credit the editor with that. And I think that that's why investing in a good editor who gives you honest, candid advice is an important part of the process.
Mhm. Okay. And so So let's touch on like the central themes of your story and why you chose them. Why do you think the messages are especially important for young people?
I'll jump in and say, as someone who has worked with children for a long time, and
Mhm,
in school settings, and especially today, with all of the issues going on with mental health. I think
mhm,
it's so important for children to realize that they matter, and no matter what their skill set is or what their role is, it's significant and has a difference, makes a difference. And that's why, I mean, the book ends, the last line, not to be spoiler and give it away, is, Ezra discovers as he goes back underground into the garden that he's right where he belongs, and that the gifts and talents that he has makes a difference and is significant, and
mhm,
that what happens on top of the soil doesn't happen if he's not doing his work below the soil. So that message was very important. That message that you matter, you are important,
mhm.
and to acknowledge and appreciate the gifts and skill sets that you have naturally.
Yeah, yeah. And so, so what are the different messages that teachers and parents can use as a learning tool for discussions about like nature and gardening and self confidence? Is there a same message, or is there a little message different for both?
I would say the central theme of finding your purpose is applicable to all ages and to everyone. Of course, someone with more life experience, like an adult, may have a different perspective on the story and different interpretations of the relationships.
Mhm.
But at its core, it's still going to
Yeah,
be cooperation, friendship, and ultimately finding or I guess realizing that you're doing good works and everything that you do and what you're
mhm,
doing is your purpose.
mhm. Oh yeah, that's good. What was the most rewarding part of creating your guys' book, Ezra's Day Off?
For me, it was the final product, you know, because
Getting it done?
I think everybody, I've talked to a lot of people, everybody is like, oh yeah, I want to write a children's book. And so I think everybody wants to write a children's book. It's sitting down and doing it well. And we didn't
Yeah.
just want to write a children's book to say we wrote a children's book. We wanted to
Mhm.
write a children's book that would have lasting value. It wouldn't just be a check off on a bucket list,
Yeah.
but that would help us launch the ability to continue to write children's books.
I think that's probably, why you guys were able to actually, like, finish like, write it and actually finish it too, because you had a very specific goal in mind. I think that's probably really important as well with children's books specifically.
Could I just add that, when you look at self-publishing, which is the way so many people go today,
Mhm,
there were people who would have taken our story that we had written that was
mhm,
3,000 words and
mhm.
published it. But I don't think that would have been a good book. And so you have to invest and you have to say, okay, we're going to do this right. We're going to take a professional approach. And
Yeah,
I'm hoping that that's what sets us apart in this field of children's books and self-publishing is making the effort to have a standard of excellence to produce
yeah,
a product that can be timeless.
yeah, and meaningful. Yeah. And Hope, what about you?
For me, so right now I'm not currently teaching in like a public education, public institution.
Okay.
I am still teaching just in a different field. So it was important to me to still contribute bodies of work to the world of education and making an impact, even though I'm not physically there.
Mhm. Yeah. And so when did you guys start writing, your book?
So Hope, as soon as she graduated, well, let me just tell you, I mean, there's not a parent who, if their child hands them here's my 5-year plan, and on the list is write a children's book with my mom or with my
Mhm.
dad, doesn't say, okay, let's get this done. So we got on that right away, and Hope said, we're going to start now. I'm like, yes, we're going to get this. We're going to get this done. This is the beginning of the 5-year plan, not the end.
Mhm.
And so for me, that was the motivator.
Mhm.
to really fulfill a dream that I had had, because I think as adults, particularly parents, it's easy to have dreams and things that you want to do, and then you
Mhm.
put them aside, or they kind of get buried just in life. And so as soon as Hope presented that idea, we ran with it. And I think we started a lot sooner than Hope anticipated that we would, because I was all in and ready to go.
Oh, that's so exciting as a parent for your response to be like, "No, let's do this now." Like, a lot would be like, "Oh, I don't know," but, like, the fact that you motivated her to, like, start it, that's great how that turned out. And so I know you guys mentioned, you guys live in different, parts of Florida, and so you talked a little bit about your writing experience as far as, like, emailing back and forth, but can you tell us about more about your writing experience and how you guys started writing and what your, process was like? And yeah, how was that like back and forth?
Okay, so can I just go back a little bit further? I think, again, somebody's inclination to write is something that it's just like somebody who's an artist or an athlete, right? It's always there.
Yeah.
One of my earliest memories of Hope as a child is carrying around a little journal with a pen, and she couldn't even write. So, so I think she already always had an inclination to that.
Yeah.
And so for me, writing has always been a part of my life. And
Mhm.
so um, that getting that habit is something I think that we had both already established.
Yeah.
And for us, the real thing was doing that story mapping, which is really modeled after there's a book, it's called Writing the Natural Way, that kind of explains that mapping of writing and how to generate ideas and formulate your story or whatever you're writing. And so that was really intentional work. But I have to tell you, as an author, from there, the story just came. I mean, I can't, there was nothing, I can't tell you we did this and then this happened. It just, we had the plan, and then it evolved and it just became. And now I would like for Hope to add on to that, but I don't, you know, I think sometimes you want to make it a science, and I'm not always sure that writing is as much of a science as it is something that, if you are inclined to be creative and you, that muse begins to stir within, and you are producing, the story really, I don't want to say it wrote itself, but it just really fell into place, at least from my perspective.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember the like exact day that I brought up this whole conversation to my mom. We were
Mhm.
having just kind of like a random mini getaway trip in Florida, going to a place, a small town where most people don't go. And we ended up at this restaurant that was beachfront. And I told her, this is something that I want to do. Are you interested? She said yes. So then she was like, do you have any ideas? And I was like, I do actually. Like it came to me the night before. I was
Mhm.
like, I want it to be about gardening, or I want the story to take place in a garden. And I think it would be cool to have insects in a garden and see how they interact with each other and have them learn about their different roles. And so it just happened from there, and then everything else spiraled after that.
Yeah. And so do you guys have a favorite part of your guys' book? Like a favorite page or line or
I really, really like alliteration. That's always been one of my favorite literary features. And so that was something that was really important to me to have in the book. And
Mhm.
something that's brought up twice, like at the beginning, when Ezra's going through his inner turmoil and he's like, I hate being underground. Everything down here is dark, dull, damp, and dirty. And then towards the end of the book, after he meets other people that contribute to his self-discovery journey, he's back in the ground and
Mhm.
he's like, it is um, dark, damp, but and dirty, but it is certainly not dull. So I like
Mhm.
that it was brought back again, but had a different spin on it. And I
Mhm.
think that reminds me of really good songwriting, where it's like the same thing in every verse, and then once you get to the
Yeah.
bridge or the last verse, it slightly changes. And so it really goes back to that important point that they were trying to make.
Mm-hmm.
Another part I mentioned that I like the end of the book where it's he realizes he's right where he belongs. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but there's times that one of my favorite parts in the story is when Abeha tells Ezra that he's not supposed to be up on top of the soil. Like, what are you doing up here? I see you. And so that part of the story I really like when he encounters a bird and then doesn't realize why the bird can be a danger to him. And so that's one of my favorite points is when Abea says, I see you, but I know you're not supposed to be up here, and what are you doing up here? Because
Mm-hmm.
recognizing he was out of where he was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. And so, were there any challenging parts of writing or developing the story? And if so, how did you guys overcome them?
I think the most difficult thing, which my mom has brought up a couple of times, was just condensing the story and doing
Yeah.
a lot of show, not tell, with the descriptive language that we use, and then also thinking about the pictures that would support the story as well. And then trying to introduce a character and have the audience fall in love with them, even if they're there for only a short amount of time. Like
Mhm.
Dante comes in at basically the end of the book, but he's still very cool. You know his personality and his dynamic just by the entrance of him on the first page.
Nice. And so, what has been the feedback from children and parents who've read your book?
Well, I'll jump in there and I'll tell you some of my favorite text messages I got are I got the book for my grandson for Christmas, and he's 6, and he reads it every night to his parents. I mean,
Oh,
that was really neat. And so hearing from people who have given the book. I have another friend who has grandchildren, and she's like, I gave this book to everybody for Christmas, not just grandchildren, but friends she had who have grandchildren.
mhm.
And she's like, the feedback has been wonderful. And so that's been really neat when it has accomplished what our goal is, at least from the feedback that we've gotten, that children like it, they respond to it, and it has engaged them in reading.
Nice. And Hope, what about you? What about friends and did anyone know that you guys were writing a book? Were people shocked that you guys wrote a children's book together or just in general?
I think we told like our inner circles, at least for me, it was like a very selective amount because, there's always the possibility of it not becoming an existence. And then also, you don't want to be like, I'm writing a book. But now we have the product to show, so it's a little bit easier to talk about. My friends were really excited for it. They were very supportive. And some of my friends are teachers, so I know they've gotten it, read it to their class, and they've had a very fun time discussing the book. Um,
Mhm.
but I think one of the reviews that sticks out to me that we got and had received was someone said, this is a newfound new age book, and it's the modern day if you give a mouse a cookie.
Oh, fun. That's a really good comment. What about your professor Hope that you kind of like this has snowballed from your senior paper? Has she or he do they know you wrote a book?
Yeah, so after the book came out, I emailed my core professors that I had at Stetson, let them know. They were all very excited. They're like, oh, I'm grabbing my copy right now. So it's just really fun to share that with them because Stetson is a university that really cares about the goodness of the planet and the culture that we promote, and of course, education. And the program that they have there is just incredible. So I wanted to give them a nod saying, thank you for sculpting me into the person that I am. And I was so happy to share that with them.
Cool. And what about family members? What have they thought of your guys' book?
I think the response has been good. I know my sister-in-law bought it for her grandchildren this Christmas, my brother and sister-in-law, and our my youngest son got it and said, "Hey, y'all need to sign my book." And so it's been really fun. I just would also like to add in there that I too went to Stetson long before Hope did.
Oh,
And while
wow.
I started out as a psychology major, it was my English professor there who really influenced me and encouraged me to continue writing and to focus on writing. So I think that I just wanted to underscore that theme of Stetson and the ability to connect with professors in a way that has an impact on your life, not only on campus, but throughout life. Can be
Very cool.
inspirational.
Very cool. And so advice would you guys give to aspiring authors who want to write children's books that are both fun and educational?
First, I would say write and don't stop. And the second thing I would say again, and I think I've said it like several times in this conversation, is get an editor, get a good editor, because there will be people who will take your product or what you write and say, yes, I'll publish it. But the question is it the quality that you want it to be? Because
Mhm.
I think a lot of people now just kind of check that box and write the book. So I would say
Yeah.
write, be confident in what you do, and take the time to find and invest in an editor who will really help shape your work and make it a work of excellence.
Mhm. And Hope, what about you?
I think it starts with finding your purpose, like Ezra did, and finding something that is important to you and something that you're passionate about, because that's what's going to make it easier. It's fun to work on a project that you're excited about rather than something that someone has given you, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what happens in school a lot of times. It's like, oh, these are the standards and these are the books that you have to read, rather than let's cultivate a love for reading and you can read the books that you choose.
Mhm. Yeah, that's really good advice. That's true. Um, so do you guys have any more plans for Ezra or any adventures that he's going to go on next, or do you guys have any other books that you want to write or any plans for this year for Ezra's day off?
So I have emailed recently, Hope, a list of ideas to do a sequel to Ezra's Day Off. We haven't discussed that further. We also worked on another project, and so we do have another book coming out in the fall of this year, and we're excited about that. But our goal for Ezra is really we want it to get into as many hands as possible and as many readers as possible um, just to get it out there, and that's the hard part, right? That's the challenge. So the goal is
Yeah.
to continue to promote, to continue to push to get it out there, to continue to encourage people to read it. The exciting thing is really the fact that people who have read it, people who have shared it, when they give the feedback. So it's that word of mouth, and we're hoping that that really takes off and catches on and uh, drives interest into Ezra. So when we do come out with that sequel, people will be ready for it.
Yeah. And what does it feel like for your guys' book to be in like classrooms and libraries and bookstores? What does that feel like?
It's surreal. It's definitely, it feels good to know that you're putting out something of high quality into the world and that you have a very small ripple effect in a big pond.
Mhm. Yeah, I bet. So what other do you guys have any personal goals for this year other than writing, or is it just a lot of writing goals?
Well, I am continuing to work in education, and I'm hopeful that we will get some more story ideas out of that experience. And I would like to see. I told Hope, I said, we've got to write more than one book. And she's like, but do we have to write like 5 or 10 of them, right now? And I'm like, yes, we do. We need to get it done and get it out there. So a goal is to begin another for me this year is for us to begin working on another story because it does take 6 months, and by the time you do illustrations and that kind of stuff, you're about a year into it. So that is on my list this year is to do a sequel to Ezra, since we have
Very
a
cool.
different book coming out in the fall
Nice.
of this year.
Nice. What about you, Hope? Do you have any goals for this year?
Yeah, of course. Since, it's still the beginning of the year, most people choose their resolutions and everything. I typically choose a word to guide my year, and everything that I want kind of flows from that word. And the word that I chose for this year was happy. So I'm trying to do things that will make myself happy. How can I make others happy? And what can I do for the world to make it happy?
Mhm.
So I do plan on writing every single day. I do journal every single day, and that's something that feeds me, fuels me, and makes me happy. And then continuing to work alongside my mom and develop, storyboard, and execute more books.
Yeah, that's great. And so how was this experience for both of you guys? Did it bring you guys, you obviously both seem very close, but did it bring you guys closer together, or what has that relationship like been like for you guys as far as completing a book together?
I think it's been a cool opportunity because obviously our relationship is mother-daughter, but I kind of got to see her as a peer and someone we're like working in a business setting almost, so it's just different. It was interesting to see a different side of my mom because obviously I've known her my entire life, but I got to see a different side of her throughout this
Yeah,
process.
very cool. And what about you, Lori?
Well, I was just going to say, it does become very collaborative, right? So when
Mhm.
you're having a conversation with the editor and discussing feedback, there are decisions that you make. And as a parent, sometimes you can just tell this is what we're going to do, right? And so to
Yeah.
Hope's point, it became very collaborative. What do you want to do? Do you agree or disagree? And so that was the whole process. And there were some things that I deferred to her on because I recognized that um, particularly like with illustrations that she had a specific vision for that. So working together was really neat, and it did become much more collaborative than parenting, right? Where you're
Yeah.
guiding and telling. I will say that I have 4 children, so she's the youngest of 4,
Oh, wow.
and but this is it's really neat to have multiple children, and then because you have a common ground, right? And a common direction that you want to work in, it's been really neat to collaborate and to work together. And I believe that my other children are excited about this process, and it has continued to draw us close together um, through this experience.
That's great. Yeah, it seems like you guys have made a really great co-writing team, and I think it's probably really fun at family events to discuss your guys' book and things like that. So that's really fun. Well, I think that's all the time we have for today. Is there anything else that you guys would like to share with us? Do you guys have a website or any social media where people can reach you at?
So we do have a website, HersheyBooks.com, but we are available right on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And so we would just encourage people to get the book and share the book. And I think that's our real push right now. It's just
Yeah,
getting it out there. It's on our website, but of course it's available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and multiple other. I was surprised when I Googled Ezra's Day Off online, the many different venues that it could be purchased through.
yeah. I just have one last question for you guys, and that is, what is the number one message you guys hope of your book, um, young readers take away from reading your book?
I would say if I had to put it into one teeny tiny sentence with like a bow on it, it's that you are here for a reason and your purpose matters.
And what about you, Lori?
And I would agree because I said earlier, you matter and that's important. And it's fun to know. That's why those fun facts are neat, right? Because it highlights a skill set that specific insect has that no other insect has.
Mhm.
And
That's
so
true.
the fact that you matter and you make a difference and you are where you belong is important.
Yeah. That's great. I think those are both really good takeaways. Well, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you guys taking the time to interview with me and discuss your guys' book. It's a wonderful topic and book for kids. I love how meticulous you guys were in creating your book, and you thought of every little detail, and I think that's great. And it's a finished product. And thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for your time. We appreciate you as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. And as they mentioned, their book Ezra Stay Off is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. It is also available on archwaypublishing.com. And please, if you get it, please leave them a review. I know they would love that. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.